everyone. Welcome to today's town hall. We're super excited to dive in and kind of talk about some of the updates happening here at SYA and provide a little insight into what happened at school this year. But first, I just want to reiterate that we are recording this session and it will be shared to the greater SYA community at a later date. And I also just want to thank everyone for coming today and for all of your support of SYA in so many different ways. We are super grateful to have you as a loyal member of this community. If you have questions or comments, just please feel free to use the chat feature or the Q&A feature. We'll be checking that throughout the session. And then I'd also encourage you to just drop your name in the chat, where you're calling from, and what your connection is to SYA. We'd love to hear from you. So right now I'm going to toss it over to Tom to start us off. So Tom, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sam. And really, let me echo Sam's deepest thanks for your support. It means a great deal to us throughout the years at SYA. So from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the entire SYA community, thank you. Thank you. What's interesting, I was thinking today what to say to you, and really the first thing that popped into my mind is in a week, I'll be down at Logan Airport welcoming back the students, actually talking to their parents, and because when they get off the plane, that wonderful embrace that happens of parent and kid. So I quickly fade into the background, but it's just wonderful to see that reuniting of the families over here. And of course, the students are hugging each other as they leave each other in Boston. So it's I can't wait for that moment next week. As many of you know, this is the second year that we have been back in full swing. There was a year 2 years ago when we needed, because of the pandemic, not to run, which was a tough decision, but the right decision for us. But it's so great to see over the past 2 years record enrollments of students in our 3 countries right now that are back in full swing. That's France and Spain and Italy. And it's really nice to see that for next year we have another banner crop of students. So we'll talk more about that in today's webinar. And I just want to emphasize something else that Sam said, which is we'd love interaction. It's really helpful to us. So post questions that you have, and we've already received some, so we'll go through that. I want to just say to you that I also had a chance this year to get to 2 of the countries. And last spring I was over in Italy, so I was over in France and Spain toward the end of December, and it was so great to be immersed in that and just see the energy. And it would remind you of all the intrepid spirits of SYAers past. And this year was nice to see not many people really needing to put on masks. I think we've only had 1 or 2 cases of COVID this year. So it feels very much like SYA pre-pandemic. So it was great to see that in action. The thing that's kind of different than if you had been at SYA, say 5, 10 years ago, is that we really are getting kids out of their seats much more. I mean, clearly we're in a traditional school and classrooms, but we're really using the area, not only the town, city itself, but beyond that, to really educate kids and to use all the resources that we have outside our schools, literally right outside the door, to get kids interacting with people in town, get them visiting museums and places of interest, not only in the area, but within the whole country. So we are getting kids out. In fact, 1 day a week, we dedicate to making sure that our lessons are real life lessons out in using the language and the culture. And then also we have right now in most of our places, students are doing their capstone projects. This is a culmination of work that they've been doing that really they're immersing themselves in something they really have piqued their interest during their time. And the most important thing is it's not a term paper. It really is that they need to connect with people and the issues, and then bring those forth and present them to their peers and their faculty. So really exciting things. And it can range from a few years ago, a young woman ended up interviewing all the women and politicians in Rennes, and brought some in and had them speak about being a woman in politics in France, to a student in Italy who was an apprentice to a cobbler and spent many an afternoon with this older gentleman and speaking Italian, and then literally making a pair of shoes. So you've got a lot of fun, interesting, meaty topics that happen. So it's great to see. And then want to also say that the success that we're feeling today is really reflective of some of the decisions we made right before the pandemic, actually. We were talking about this curriculum and really evolving that. And so we have seen the full bloom of that work. The other thing that we did was, for a number of years, we had admitted students. It just wasn't noted, but we had admitted students for a semester, and we formalized that. And in large part because there are some students who really wanted to go to SYA, but couldn't, either for financial reasons for a full year, or many of them because they're involved in important activities back at their school for part of the year. So we have now formalized that program. And what's really, we keep our eyes and ears to the ground to make sure that's all working. I would say a few things. One of them is primarily we are a full year institution, and that is not changing. Maybe we have a quarter of the students who come in for either the fall or the spring semester, about the same number each. And so we want to make sure that's a smooth transition. And I'll give you an example. Last year, in the first year, we heard from, we asked students in surveys, and also the RDs talked to students, and it was clear that the orientation for the spring term students was a little tougher to do. Obviously, many students had bonded already. So this year we worked really hard on that. And I'll give you an example. In France, there was a spirit committee, and the students actually went with the RD and met the new students at Charles de Gaulle, and rode back with them, and had a lot of special events, social events, to make students feel really at home. And so again, this is relatively new in a formal way for us. And so we're constantly tweaking things to make sure SYA is as welcoming as it can be. So there's a lot of things here, and I want to spend a moment and introduce the chair of our trustees, and that's Holland, Goss, Lynch, France 86. And I'll say this about the board that we have, and I have fortunately been part of educational institutions for my professional life. I would say that what the SYA board is an incredibly active, engaged, and fun board. We are actually made up of 6 sitting school heads from our member schools and 12 alums or parents of SYAers. And that interaction brings a lot of good conversation to life, and a lot of mutual respect for the educators and the alums. So with that, I can't thank Holland enough for her incredible leadership in that effort. And we had just met a few weeks ago. So Holland, you probably have some things to share with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom. I hope am I visible? I don't know. Okay, great, super. I just, thank you for saying all those nice things about the board. I say right back at you. Our board feels so delighted and comfortable, and just great about having Tom as our leader. He's been so capable for so many years, and I can assure all of you on the call that we've got the best head of school out there in Tom Hassan, and that certainly came through in our board meeting. There was a lot of appreciation for him and his team. Also, a lot of appreciation for all of you who support SYA in so many ways, through financial donations, through just being great ambassadors for the program, and through your faith in the program, sending your kids, whatever role you play. We appreciate it, and we could not have as fine a program without you. So thank you very much. Just to share a little bit about our spring board meeting, just to tell you, we meet twice a year in person in the fall and the spring, and once a year remotely as a full board. And then we have committee meetings remotely throughout. So at our spring board meeting, we do a lot of regular business that you would expect a school board to do. with, reports on our finances and the program and hearing from the RDs, admissions reports and all of that. And I would say in this session, the overall, if I had to come up with a word to talk about our board right now, it would be exhaling. We have been through so much in the last few years, and this is now finally a time when we all feel we can just exhale a little, let our shoulders down. We've come through the pandemic. We've done very well. We've rebounded, in fact, with a great spring forward. You'll hear a little bit more about the admissions for this coming up year, but we're in a very strong position, especially considering that we had to close for the year. So there's a real feeling of optimism and exhalation for the board. One of the most important things that we do as a board, working with Tom and his team, is to set a strategic path for school year abroad moving forward. And that is something that we had a strategic plan that was wrapping up in the last year or so. And so we have adopted in this spring meeting, we're not calling it a strategic plan per se, we're calling it a strategic posture. And that comes out of a feeling that we're still in somewhat uncertain times. And while we would like to have a strategic direction, we don't want to bind ourselves quite as firmly as a plan implies. A posture feels that allows a lot more flexibility in making our decisions, but still using it as a guide to make decisions over the next few years. And one of the aspects of this strategic posture that we approved as a board this time is really a theme that emerged is building partnerships. And there are lots of partnerships that School Year Abroad engages in that really support the program and carry it forward. And when I say that, I mean, well, partnerships with our donors, of course, making sure we are good stewards of them and of the great contributions that we receive. So we have a new investment policy to make that's part of it. We will certainly be doing, now that we can get back out on the road, lots of appreciation events and occasions where we can. I've had a chance to meet with so many alums in the last year now that we can meet again in person, and it's been really wonderful and just great to hear the stories. Also, partnerships with our member schools. These are 44 schools that we have they have a special relationship with SYA in terms of sending kids and promoting SYA on their campuses. It's a great group of schools. We have revised the agreement that has been in place with them, and it's much clearer in terms of what the expectations are on all sides, which is great, and particularly in terms of our financial assistance. And that was a big deal for us because it had been a complicated process. And this new member school agreement simplifies things. We think it will allow a lot more good communication between the member schools and ourselves, good feelings between us. We will now be upping our financial aid to member school students a little bit and just simplifying how it all works, which is great. And then one other partnership that is going to be increasingly important as we move forward that we also are looking to strengthen involves enrollment, and that's with the visa process. And that's become a big challenge for us. So we've been talking as a board how to build those partnerships with the countries where we have campuses in the United States. So those consulates here in the US, and helping that visa process, which also then strengthens the partnership that we have with the sending families. So it's a web, and there's a lot more in the strategic posture, but I would say that's a general sense of the meetings that we had and some of the conversations that we had as a board. There were a couple of questions that I'm just going to quickly address that came through. There were lots of questions that were sent in advance. Thanks so much. And I have a couple on my plate. One is from a new trustee. We were delighted to welcome AC Almanord, France 98. She'll be joining our board in July, and she appropriately asks, what are the organization's challenges for the next 5 years? Well, I look forward to digging into all of them with you, AC. And I would say, enrollment, and particularly the process of enrollment, is a big challenge for us moving forward. We have minor students, they require a different type of a visa. We work with 27 different consulates. They all have a slightly different process. Tom can speak more about that, but it is a challenge and something we'll need to be thinking about. I would also say the semester component is something that still is working out and figuring out the best balance of semester kids and year-long kids, and staying mission focused there. Global politics or goings on, always a challenge for us. We just try to keep our knees bent and stay flexible. Tom certainly exemplified that when COVID hit. And I would also say coming up these days a lot is mental health. And that's always been something that SYA has paid attention to naturally, but something that we will continue to make sure we are best in class in addressing for our students. So that's a little tidbit. A couple other questions, and this goes back to the global political situation. We have a question from Peter Hill, I think France 74. Will the Chinese program continue given the tension between China and the US? And then from Mike Pignatello, France 92, how is the program in China doing post-COVID? Well, we closed the program in China. Actually, we had planned to close it the year that COVID hit. Due to declining enrollment, we wanted to take a pause, see if there was a way that we could do it better, and reflect on our presence in China and how it could best serve our high school student population. Then COVID hit. All the kids obviously had to come home. And we really have not been able to get back to China. We have done some work on reimagining the program. And we have a great document that outlines a few possibilities, but we don't feel that China is a place where we can look to do anything into the near future. And so we have put that on hold indefinitely to rethink that. We also are very much focused on the 3 campuses that we are running, making sure those are stable, as strong as they can be, evaluating the programs there before we even consider looking to another campus. So I think those are I'm sorry, there was one other question, which was, I just kind of answered it, which is, are you looking at any new host countries? And if so, what is the thinking? That was from Mary Beth Barber, Spain 84. And no, at the moment we are not. We are really laser focused on doing the best we can in the 3 countries that we have. So that wraps it up for me for the moment. I'll toss it right back over to Tom, and I'm just with one more thank you to both him and to all of you out there who've joined us today. Thanks.
Thanks again, Holland. And you've given so much good information. Let me just pick up on a few of the strands of it and give a little bit more information. One issue is really about kind of the visa situation, which is really an interesting one, which is it's one of those things that SYA does not have the control over. And we're dealing with minors, as you mentioned, Holland, and that really is, so things are constantly changing in what the even individual consulates want. So we're keeping a close eye on that and working really hard to keep one step ahead of all those challenges. And we're doing it, but it is a kind of thing where we're in partnership with parents, and we're working hand in hand to make sure that they do get their visas. 99% of the time it works. Every once in a while, a student will have to be delayed because the visa comes in literally the day after, which happened this fall. but we're working hard on that. So that's one issue. Another issue you were mentioning is financial aid. And I just want to pause and thank people again, because the first ever comprehensive capital campaign that SYA finished during the pandemic time raised a lot of money to do a number of things, enhancing our endowment, actually more than doubling it, and two, to give us more financial aid resources, which really emboldened us to look at the member school thing and say, let's make that cleaner. We can put some more money there. I have to say, I've had conversations all spring with these school heads from the 44 member schools, and they couldn't be more happier with our new enhanced program. So that's really good. And another thing that we did with this enhanced financial aid pot of money is that we were able to give each resident director a discretionary pot of money that they could, at their discretion, give to financial aid kids, some of whom needed a winter coat, didn't have one, or everyone else was going to do something else on an independent travel and they couldn't, and the RD had the money to help provide that opportunity. So it's really made a huge difference. So again, there are many ways that this capital campaign has really enhanced SYA. So it's been great to see. I also wanted just to add, before we get into some of the other questions that were asked, to remind people, I know we've been talking a lot about the full year program, but SYA does have a robust summer program that's 5 weeks. And that will begin again at the end of June this year. And this summer we have people going to our campuses in Spain and France and in Italy. We have a total of about 90 students who will be going for us this summer. That's a different group than students we host during the year. And so they're waving the SYA banner when they get back, which is really nice. But more importantly than waving the banner, they get that experience, both that will include host family living, total language immersion. And these are kids who usually want to kind of get a leg up on their language study so they can jump up a little higher. And we're probably I say proudly, the only summer program out there that's really much more kind of language focused than just a wonderful visit around to see the Eiffel Tower or something like that. So we really do give them the full SYA rigor and value that we provide. So that's exciting. And then Holland and I have touched upon the robust enrollment for next year. And I always find it helpful to give some numbers because people are curious. So Spain next year will be about 65 students, which is remarkable. And Spain always kind of attracts the most. And I equate that directly. There's a direct correlation between that and the language study in America, because a lot of kids are taking Spanish. And so we have about 65 in France next year. We have about 60 students. And in Italy, we'll have about 40, high 40s. So those are really great for us. And in France, we've been doing some construction on the back building. For those that remember that, we've made that handicap accessible. And in fact, we have a student there right now who requires that. And so I'm delighted to be able to embrace a number of students who really want to immerse in the language and culture. So that's been great to see. So we have a lot there. Sam and Aaron, you might want to, there's some questions that came in. Holland's introduced a few. If there's others, I can answer. If you want to send those.
Tom, we had a question from Peter Lindsay, France 72, who had asked what was a major highlight from this past year and what was a major challenge that the program needs to address for future students. I think you touched a little bit on that with the spring semester welcome and that type of thing, but if you want to elaborate, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I would, I'll take the negative side first and then I'll go to the positive. I do think the visa thing for us is the strangest one. And I have to say too, coming out of COVID, a lot of these consulates are not staffed to the level that needs to be. So that presents some challenges to us. So again, we don't have control over it, but we're really focused in, and that's probably why I would identify that as our largest challenge. I think that the highlight of the year for me is just having SYA back in total full swing with a robust, group of kids. I mean, it just has been wonderful to see, and for them to really, as I mentioned earlier, getting out of their seats and engaging with the community. And I say all that, but there are those tenets of what SYA is all about. I still believe that the host family connection is really the secret sauce of SYA. I think to have kids, have that loving place to be, but it reinforces a language all the time. We try to find host families who have very little English. And another reason we're in the places we are is we want a real authentic area where there isn't a lot of American influence and English spoken. So I think these kids really have a very unique, a very real experience with that, and to see the love of what happens and the assurances that the American parents have. And in this day and age, this will come as no surprise. Even before the kids get there, there's a lot of connection of the American parent with their child's new parents overseas, and the students and all that stuff. There's a lot of Zooming that goes on, so they feel pretty pretty welcomed already before they hit the country. So that's great.
And just one other before we move forward, how does the semester option affect or change the experience for students as a whole and for the students who join at that halfway point in the year?
Yeah, I alluded to this, but I'll just say it directly. I think we're in that stage of really listening and trying to make sure that all works. And in fact, circling back to Holland's about looking at strategic posture, the way I'd characterize what we're doing right now is we've made a number of changes. So the curriculum that now and semesters, and we really want to refine it and make sure it is as strong as we can in all aspects. And I think overall, I think there's a real success to the semester program. But we do want to make sure that students feel each one has a unique thing. And in fact, I'll go back to one example too. In the spring, we do this capstone project I was describing. We also do what we call the mini capstone at the end of the first semester, so that the semester one students have a chance to do that too. So we want to make sure that everyone has some very similar kinds of components to their SYA experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. I thought it would be fun to take us through a little video slideshow, photo slideshow of the year. So we'll do that now. So just give me a second to share my screen. Obviously, this doesn't represent all of the moments throughout the year, but just kind of the big highlights. So this is our departures. It happens every year at the airport. You may remember gathering with your classmates for the first time in person at the airport. The photo on the left is our students going to Italy. The middle is France and the right is Spain. It's always kind of fun because there's a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of nerves. So this is just kind of a fun moment for the students.
And Sam, if I could just jump in for a second, but the pandemic has changed one major thing about this. It used to be that at the departures was the very first time that families and students met the RD. The RD used to come over the night before and gather the students and say hi to the parents and give some words of wisdom, and then escort the students back. And during the pandemic, what we decided to do was have the RDs meet the families virtually throughout the admissions process and the enrollment process. So they probably have about 5 times on screen with the families before that. And we just send the students over with a person from our office, and the RDs are fresh and meeting them right on their respective countries. So it's a good change. It really has been good.
I'm going to actually stop sharing for 1 second and just redo it because I want to make sure you can hear some of the sounds from the videos later. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay. So then we move on. Once students arrive in country, they get to meet their host families. This happens on the very first day. Every country does it a little bit differently, but in Italy, there's like a big ceremony, which I'll show you in a second. In France, they meet up at the school, and then in Spain, they meet up at a park, and it's just very fun and kind of welcoming for everyone. So take a look.
Jasper Calaban.
Just really fun and heartwarming. And then the first days of school, they launch into what's called the immersion unit. So this lasts for about 2 weeks, and it happens in every single country. It helps them get to know kind of the new city that they're living in. It helps them use their language skills for the first time with the community, that type of thing. And they also all go on a trip that's kind of local. So obviously France is up in the top, going to Mont Saint Michel. Spain is in the bottom left, and they go on a trip to Alcazar. Excuse my pronunciation on anything. I'm not fluent in any of these languages. And then SYA is on the right, and they go to Terracina. As Tom mentioned, there were chaperones for each country this year, and I got to go to France with the students, which was really exciting. So I thought it might be fun to kind of talk about that first fieldwork experience, which they do on the second day of school. So they're in the classroom, and they're trying to get to know Rennes for the first time. The first thing that happens is on the left here, and they actually have to learn how to use a paper map. You wouldn't be surprised to know that students these days don't know how to read paper maps, so we have to teach them how to do that. And then the next photo is them in front of school before they depart. That third photo is 2 students. They work in pairs or groups of 3 on this project, and they are at the metro station, which is where we kind of shepherd them to, and then let them go their separate ways to kind of find the locations that they're assigned. And then that last one is on location at one of the places. They're not actually out in the city alone. We are there at little checkpoints. So if they need us, they can find us, but then they all return to campus in the afternoon, and they get their cell phone back, and they kind of carry on with their day. But this is a really fun activity. I thought it was really fun to watch them do it and kind of run around the city. So it's a great way to warm up to where they are. In October, they kind of start settling in and finding those extracurriculars. So here's a bunch of them. There's some ceramics classes. That second photo is the SYA Italy Law Program, which is kind of new this year with a local lawyer. They go through cases. The third one is the SYA Italy Archaeology Group, which was founded by a group of students, just kind of getting out there in nature and doing kind of just local preservative things, working with the community. There's fencing in France, and then obviously all 3 campuses have cooking classes, which are super popular. That's what I would definitely want to do. And then we will jump into a little bit of field work in Spain. So this is a trip to a local winery. The students got to kind of do every single piece of the winemaking process, from stomping on grapes and kind of picking them off the vines to making the labels and bottling. So that was a really exciting process for them. They got to learn a lot as they did it. Just kind of fun. Photos are beautiful too. And then, as I mentioned, I thought we'd dive into cooking class in Italy. This is a popular 4-week course that the students get to take, and they learn how to make all sorts of Italian specialties like ravioli and different kinds of carbonara and just crazy things. And they get to eat it all too, which is obviously great. In Spain in October, they celebrate Festival of Pilar, which is it's a local festival that they get to share this experience with their host families. So this is kind of a fun thing. On the left, you'll see 2 photos of students dressed in the traditional dress, wearing the clothing of the region, and they are with their host families in those photos. And then some other students kind of attended events at the bullfighting arena in Zaragoza. So just a really fun experience for them to have while they're at school. And it's nice that it's in October, so they get to do that with their host families. In October, France hits the road. So the group splits into 2, and they go to Marseille and Montpellier. Their first assignments include kind of navigating and finding different locations in those cities and sending selfies back to the teachers to kind of check in. And then students in Montpellier got to go to a salt marsh and visit some local museums. And the same on the other half in Marseille, they did a guided tour, and they went to the Museum of Roman Culture and an aqueduct to kind of see that in person. So this is a fun first real experience outside of Rennes that they get to go on. In November, Spain takes their first trip, and they go to Barcelona, the Basque Country, and Andalusia. And all of these places, the students were able to visit local landmarks and UNESCO World Heritage Sites. They also got to eat a lot of great meals with the local cuisine, and they sampled foods from each region. In November, around Thanksgiving time or right before, students kind of pair up with the local high school where they eat lunch every day, and they spend a day there shadowing 1 or 2 students. You'll learn more about it later, but we kind of do, actually, I'll get to it later. Well, I won't preview it yet. But they're able to learn about kind of the French school system here and make new local friends, which is really fun for them. And those become their friends that they kind of hang out with and eat lunch with throughout the year. November, Italy takes their first big trip to Turin. They get to kind of visit the mountains, and the main theme of this trip is identity for them. So they're kind of figuring out what contributes to the identity of a city and a culture in a particular place. So they got to learn about that beforehand and apply those skills when they got there. Also, you'll notice everyone's drinking a foamy coffee beverage in this. This is called Bittering, which is a dark chocolate espresso with a whipped egg white on top, which is kind of local to the region. So there was lots of photos of them drinking those, which looked really fun. So if you ever get there, definitely try it.
Sam, thanks for that clarification. I thought it was beer.
It looks like beer. And then we get into the holiday season. So we celebrate Thanksgiving in France, Spain, all the countries really, with kind of a celebration at school. And then the kids obviously can celebrate with their host families in certain ways. Some of them even have American Thanksgiving with them and kind of bring their culture to them, which I think is really fun. France students visit a vocational high school not far away, and those students actually prepared them a meal and then taught them how to set like a fancy table for Thanksgiving, which I think is really fun, sharing that kind of culture there. And then they also have a chance to deck the halls at school right before the break. So in December, SYA Spain enjoys kind of a long weekend, and they did a lot of traveling with their host families this year. So these are just some fun photos of them on location in Spain. And then Tom mentioned the mini capstone earlier that students do. So we will listen to a France student take on his.
Et les 3 garçons sont très intéressants. Il y a Hippolyte, il a 10 ans. Il y a Quentin et Tristan, ce sont des jumeaux. Ils ont 14 ans, presque 15 ans. Et je passe beaucoup de temps avec eux parce que je joue à Fortnite et à des jeux vidéo avec eux.
So obviously at this point in the year, their language skills have improved a lot since the beginning, and it's evident in that, and they're becoming a lot more comfortable kind of speaking the language in front of their peers all the time. So this is a really great way for them to showcase their skills at the midpoint. This particular student is actually one of our scholars this year. His name is Namil. He's a France 71 scholar, and it's been fun to follow his journey. And at the end of December, sadly, our fall semester students are leaving. So we have the nice send-off. Each campus does a celebration, all in different forms. There's certificates, there's hugs, there's tears, I'm sure. There's good food, all that fun stuff as we say goodbye to the fall semester students. And then we quickly welcome the spring semester students in January. That top photo on the left is the France students coming in, and there are some full year students sprinkled in there from the Spirit Committee that went to the airport to welcome them, which I think is really great. The photo on the right is an SYA Italy student greeting his host dad for the first time. And then the bottom photo is the Spain students all together on a little dessert trek through the city. And then in January, the first fieldwork activity that they do is actually designed by the full year students to help the spring semester students kind of get acquainted with the city. So they pick different landmarks that they take them to, and they kind of tell them about it in language, which I think is really great. And it just helps them get more familiar with the new place that they're living in. I thought I'd touch on one of the most popular elective classes in SYA Italy. We call it agroecology, but it's where science meets food. So it's just kind of learning about the science behind food. It's really fun. A lot of kids take it. It looks awesome. I wish I could take it. But the photo on the top left is students making mascarpone. And then the next photo with the espresso is kind of espresso used from coffee beans that students roasted last year. And then those ingredients come together to make tiramisu at the end, which they get to eat. And then on the very bottom, there's a photo of students learning about cheese coagulation. So they kind of do that, and then they go on a fieldwork activity and they talk to local cheesemongers and they kind of learn about that process in markets, which is really cool. Oh, sorry, skipped. In February, Spain students go to a coal mine and they do a fieldwork activity there, which is really interesting. This particular coal mine closed its doors in 1968. So they had the opportunity to kind of go down into the mines on a guided tour and see what that process was like in the 19th century and how it kind of worked for the people that worked there. Very cool, very different. Fun activity. And then Italy goes on their trip to Naples and Pompeii. They're able to visit and kind of do all the architectural ruins and tours, and then visit mosaics that they learned about in class at a local museum. In the second photo from the left, you'll notice that students are kind of pointing at this carbonized loaf of bread at Pompeii. And then back at school after this lesson, they actually make a similar loaf using ancient grains and yeast that they learned about, which is really cool. In February, Spain goes on their annual ski trip. This one's always a favorite with students. Not everyone skis, so not everyone goes, but it's a great trip and a lot of kids love it. And then in France, the whole school moves to Paris for a week. And they go to all the usual sites and also some of the ones that are not so usual. So they visit a lot of local museums that they learned about in school to kind of see the artwork that they saw in class. And they also went on a guided tour of covered passages, which is really interesting and I didn't know existed in Paris. So that's kind of fun. And they visited Shakespeare and Company, which is always a favorite. We actually had a student wearing her Shakespeare and Company sweatshirt on the last town hall, which I thought was really fun. So they had just gotten back from that trip at that point. In March, Spain goes to Belchite for a day, and they kind of have learned about the Spanish Civil War and historical memory at that point. So they're learning about that in person, and the Battle of Belchite was fought there. So they got to see where that happened in country, which is really cool. And they also go on a extended trip. So the group splits into three to go into these 3 different locations to deepen their kind of classroom learning on art, history, and language. And for fun, they also took flamenco class. So learn some fun skills there. I thought that was a great video. Italy goes to Sicily in March. Also, this is the travel packed month for the kids. The top photo is a local man from Palermo who basically grills out in the street. We have a relationship with him. All of the kids got to bring some sort of meat to put on the grill, and he grilled it up for them. So that was a really local experience, which is really cool. And then the other photos are just kids presenting very much in situ in places that they learned about. We have a hike up in the coastline. And then there was also a challenge to pick up an octopus at a local food market. So that's obviously the photo on the end, which is kind of fun. And then, as I spoke about earlier, a school shadows SYA France in the spring. It's kind of an exchange type of thing. By this point, the students have a really good grasp on Rennes, and it's the kind of their new city. So they're able to kind of set up little lessons and take these kids around school, around Rennes, and teach them the places that they have now learned about and are experts on, which I think is a really great way to exchange skills and just kind of the culture of the local city. Italy students went to the Museum of Portici, where there was an exhibit dedicated to a native Ukraine painter. The students listened to a brief explanation of the artist's work and then reproduced their own version, which is what you see kind of in the bottom image. And there's also a little video of them doing that.
Now, Miles, could you explain to the world what you are doing right now?
Yeah, so we went through the museum and we found all these mystical creatures, and we're taking inspiration from them to draw things like this.
Yeah.
So just them with the chance to be an artist for a day. And then the Spirit Community in France had a Spirit Week in April, kicked off the month. So from left to right, there was Decade Day, there was like State and Country Day, where you dress up as your home state and country, Sports Day for your favorite sports team or what you do as a sport, and then Breton Day, where they got SYA hats, which was their end of year kind of fun gift. So they all look very nice in their new swag. And then as I mentioned earlier, they split into two to go to these places in the fall, and they also do that in the spring. So kids that got to do the swap that didn't get to go to Marseille or Montpellier got to switch and do that now. Some really great photos. They're actually harvesting salt in one of them, which is really cool. Spain had a chance to go to the Catechees so they could visit the coastal town as well as some of the Dolly Museum there and the house. So that was really fun. France students wrapped up their kind of travel for the year with a trip to Normandy, where they learned about the 2 world wars and visited different landmarks, did some field work there. And then this actually just happened in Spain very recently. One of our Spain faculty members, Antonio Peña, had been interested in kind of exploring the Spanish public education system and the opportunities for social change that teaching in public school represents. So just a few weeks ago, he was offered a position to teach at one of those schools. And our students actually had the opportunity to go to one of those schools, 10 of them. They had to apply and they were selected. They went for a little bit of an exchange program. So they got to do that at the school he's teaching at. They were able to kind of attend classes with local students and learn in that immersive way that being in a remote town in Spain would offer. So that's them doing a little bit of that. Really, really cool. And then now we're fully into capstone projects. This has been happening over the last couple of weeks. There are a couple of photos of students with their capstones. There's a lot of different examples online, which you can check out. I think Erin will drop the link in the chat. But this one is a Italy student, and she actually made this outfit for her capstone, which is really awesome. Oops.
Ma bellissima.
And then as we close up the year at all of our schools, school ends in 1 week from today. They have an open mic night every year at SYA Italy. So just a fun chance for students to kind of connect in a celebration at the end of the year. And then we'll just end with a fun tap video. So yeah, it's been a very robust year at our schools, as you can see. There were so many other things that I could have put in there, but those were just some of the highlights. And thank you to all of you for your support of SYA, which makes a lot of these things possible. Many of these moments are kind of brought to you by the SYA Fund and the campaign. So we are really grateful to be able to offer students all of these opportunities to participate.
And thank you, Sam. That was a lot of work, I know, to pull that together. It was just delightful to watch. Thank you.
Fun.
Yeah.
And now I think we're going to jump into some Q&A. We have some questions. I think we're going to have others probably. So if you have questions, please send them along. But we can start off. Tom, I think you can probably touch on this one. It's from Bowie Casey, Spain 17. And he asks, is Cinco Dias in Spain still happening? This is the program where you live with another host family in another part of Spain for 5 days.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. It had to curtail that around the pandemic time, but we're bringing back some things. You just saw the program with Antonio, so we're trying that. One of the issues, and everyone should know this, that when we have students host with host families, we do background checks, and so obviously we do that for the host families. If we do send kids on another program during the year, we would need to do the same. So again, it's a health and safety thing. So we're working on that, but we have a lot of different ways for kids to connect with the local high school kids, which is fun too.
All right. We have another one, which is very curious as to how, we kind of answered this a little bit earlier, but just to touch on, I'm very curious as to how the cooling of relations with China, the war in Ukraine, inflation, all these things impacting a great international study abroad program at the high school level. Tom, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I would say that in each of the countries, we have a course that's kind of like current issues. And I'm just thinking of France this year. I mean, with the protests and all of that. And so these kids see it firsthand, and we talk about it not only in those courses but throughout. So kids kind of see history being made and understanding. We help pull the curtain back so they understand what's behind these protests and how the French culture works. So it's been we get them. We try to use those moments as teachable moments.
Awesome. Alex Alger, France 79, China 12 parent asks, have SYers in France engaged in debate or even protests over recent pension reform? Tom, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so just to piggyback on what I said, and hi, Alex. I know Pascal has talked a lot about it in his class, and poor Mina, who's the RD, had to rearrange things just to make sure the health and safety of the kids, because there were a few protests in Rennes, clearly many more in Paris and the larger cities. But again, she kept an eye on that, and then Pascal kept an eye on the education piece of it. So so the kids safely could study and understand this.
And then this is a hot topic because students are coming home next week, but is there any advice for re-entry at home and school? And this is asked by a current parent, Holly Hunt, who is not able to make it today, but she'll get the recording. So.
Yeah, I know what we've developed over the years are what we call advisories. So each student has an advisor at the school. And in these advisory sessions, they do spend a lot of time talking about entry into the country, and then re-entry at right now in the last sessions. We also supply students and parents with links to articles they can read about this. And we're very much connected to it. And Holland, I know that you remembered your re-entry back to the state after Rennes, so you might share that.
Yeah, I'm going to put on my my alumni hat right now, and so I had a very interesting re-entry, but I think it offers a lot of good lessons just for the parents out there who are going to be welcoming their kids home. I live in San Francisco, but my mother met me in Boston when we flew back, and we spent a week driving up and down the Eastern Seaboard looking at colleges. And that might seem a little strange, but it was, at the time I felt this, and still to this day, a great re-entry, because it was a chance to be a traveler or a tourist in the United States and relearn about the country in a way where I didn't have to engage as anything other than a visitor for a week, it made for a gentle return. It allowed a lot of time for me and my mother to sit in the car and have those great conversations that parents and teens have when they're in the car driving together. And it also, it's funny, it put a lot of focus on my future trajectory, which maybe that's pressure for some kids to think about college, but for me, it was really nice to be able to think about moving forward as opposed to going back to my life in the States. I was moving forward as this new person, and it felt like it was a recognition that I was continuing on a journey. So I know that not every family is going to do that, but I think those were all really important things to keep in mind, which is, the space to adjust, kind of like the immersion unit that the kids have when they first get to their country, the time to talk in a relaxed and unpressured way, and just a recognition that your child has changed and is moving forward and will be taking on even more, and also exciting. You're taking on even more adventures. The adventure's not over of life. There's still a lot to come. So that's just add a little bit of personal flavor. I don't know if that will help anybody, but.
Oh, no, that's very helpful. And Holland, you mentioned about college. And I know there was a question about using the experience and how that connects, applying to college or whatever. I know our college liaisons over in the country, they talk with students about this, and sometimes English teachers have them write about that experience to shape it in a college essay. Many of our kids use the SYA experience to in their college essays. And I know the American universities know a lot about SYA over the years and perk up, and because they like students who have that grit and that adventuresome spirit and who are tested on their own to live and succeed. And so we are very valued in the college process. And one quick side story, Mina, the RD in France, just emailed me today. There's the American, the University of Paris just reached out to her today because there were a number of students who applied who had been in Rennes years ago who were thinking about going over there. And so they're all excited about, we want to talk to your kids while they're in Rennes next fall. So nice to see that our students are not only looking at American colleges, but looking at international universities as well.
I just wanted to jump in real quick. Aaron Erickson here. Sorry, the pollen count is high here in New England, so my voice is a little weird, but in terms of the re-entry, I asked the RDs this morning what advice they would give to parents, and I thought the advice that the Spain resident director Rocio gave was really good. She said, be patient. Most students have lived through a transformative experience, and at the beginning, it is going to be hard for them to summarize it. They will have to go through an adjustment process, just like when they first went abroad. Parents will probably notice that their kids have matured a lot, and I encourage them to keep an open mind about the transformations that they are seeing. So for any parents of current students, please just keep that in mind. Your kid is not the same as when they left, but hopefully the changes are mostly positive. And the other thing that I'll do is I'll drop a couple links in the chat, as I've been doing with some of the reentry resources that we send to families. It might just be interesting for anybody who's, wanting to learn more to peruse those. And then
I was just going to say, I'm going to tie together a few comments because it's that moment when I think about this, which is, I know a lot of students kind of go over for the language and the cultural immersion that happened, and the kids are coming back with enormous growth in that area. But I also say the thing that they come back with, which is a gift that the parents have given students, which is a maturity that the kids have and a confidence that they could try something new, maybe have some bumps and bruises along the way, but it was the student who picked him or herself up and figured it out. And that's an amazing gift for these adolescents. And SYA, gives that wonderful support, that safety net, but we do allow students to really kind of grow. And I will just say, as a longtime educator, it's a true gift today because a lot of parents won't let that happen. So thank you.
And then we have one question in the Q&A, which we can do quickly before we wrap up, which was, have there been challenges with developing relationships with existing host families and finding new host families coming out of the COVID period?
Yeah, it's interesting. I will say by country, Italy is probably our easiest country. It's a small town. Everyone knows each other. When we had celebrated with the trustees last spring in Viterbo, we had a gathering of the town. I think everyone in town came out, and including the former mayors and everything else. And so there's no problem in finding host families because they're all, they know each other and recommending people. Rennes is going to be bigger, and Rennes has, particularly in the summers, challenging because a lot of summer programs have found Rennes a pretty special place. So we have, particularly in the summer, some challenges to find host families there. And Spain, we have a pretty robust group of people, but there are a number of families who stay on with us. But at some point, they say, gee, my kids are now older and out of the house. And a lot of our students would love kind of host siblings around their age. So we're always constantly finding new families, but you'd be amazed at how many host families are long timers with us. It's terrific to see.
All right. If you have any other questions, feel free to write to us. We're happy to help. We're happy to answer anything, but I think we're going to start wrapping up. So we actually had one question about how alumni can help beyond giving to the SYA fund or helping with admissions. And that's very simple. You can attend our events, read our emails, spread the word about SYA to your peers and your friends, and add SYA on LinkedIn. That's a good way to connect, and we love to see it. We love for you to join our group, so please add it to your LinkedIn profile. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending. You were all invited to this webinar because you are such a great supporter of SYA in so many different ways. And we are really grateful to have your support as we wrap up the year. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.